Hello everyone, welcome to our second episode. Today, in this video, we are going to look at why story matters. Stories matter because they give us a definition of how the world is. Or stories matter because they give us a perspective on what goes on around the world. Consider this: everything we consume is stories. And I don't mean consuming in the sense of the things maybe which we eat. Okay, we consume those things, but for most of the things which we consume them through stories. Everything is a narrative, everything, and there's nothing which is an exception. So look at it this way. Once upon a time, there was a man and a woman living in a garden where everything was blissful. After some time, the Satan came and tricked the woman into eating the fruit of the forbidden tree. The consequence of that, Adam, or the man and the woman, whom we all know to be Adam and Eve, the first human beings, they were chased away from the Garden of Eden, where everything was blissful. After taking the fruit, they realized they were naked. Nakedness in the sense that they realized now they were conscious of their surrounding, conscious of what was going on around them. Before that instance happened, it's like they didn't have the consciousness of what was around them. Or to put it in a simpler way, they didn't have the consciousness of themselves, of who they were and what they were capable of doing. And when consciousness hit them, it's like their eyes opened, and the first thing they could ever want to do was to try to understand where they were or what had happened until they came to that state of consciousness. And in that instance, I think it's when the story or the narrative began. Even though the creation story had already existed even before they were created. But for the man, that was where the narrative itself or the story itself began. Because they had to tell themselves what had happened, and they had to tell why that happened and how it happened. And from that moment ongoing, everything around them became something to talk about, or something to understand, or something to tell about. And the only way in which they could understand or they could tell is through coming up with stories and narratives. And since they were humans, and we are humans. We are all ingrained in the same way. So we are all after stories. We are all there because we tell ourselves what happened, and we tell ourselves what is happening, and we tell ourselves what will happen. The most important thing as to why stories matter is this: nothing ever exists in a vacuum, and if there exists any vacuum, something has to fill that vacuum. And in our silences, or in those moments in which we detach ourselves from everything around us, there's still an, an unconscious story or narrative going through the deepest ends of our mind. And in a way, we can't stop the narrative because it was there, it has been there, and it will always be there. The only way in which at least we can make the narrative or the story work for us is when we come up with a better story. And the better story is the story in which we don't see ourselves as victims, but rather we see ourselves as entities and individuals with a will and a willingness to make things happen. Every time when we watch movies, when we read novels, when we listen to music, or when we do anything which involves our consciousness, we are telling ourselves this is what is happening right now. And through everything which we come into contact with, we take it as a narrative. If at all narratives couldn't exist, then it means we couldn't have anything to talk about or anything to express ourselves and the world around us with. We could have missed the channel in which the world revolves around, or we could have missed the channel in which we could have understood the world. And with that, let's meet in the next episode. For now, adios.